Hey, you're listening to Fruitless. What's up? It's Josiah. On today's episode, I was joined by Jacob Dallas Main of the Socialist Shelf to discuss Bong Joon Ho's 2013 masterpiece about fighting a class war on a giant science fiction train, Snowpiercer. If you haven't listened to the Socialist Shelf, what are you doing? It's a fantastic podcast discussing, joking about, and analyzing literature from a socialist perspective. It's well worth your time, and I'm really glad Jacob got a chance to join me here to talk about one of his favorite movies. But before we dive into the episode, I do need to say that you can support this show on Patreon. For a mere $3 a month, you get access to additional bonus episodes, the occasional deleted scene from main feed episodes, as well as access to the Fruitless Discord. Recent episodes on the Patreon have included a discussion with my friend Nathan Thiessen about my recent conversion to being a sports guy, as well as 2 music exchange episodes last month where Josh Christensen and I discussed records by Tom Waits, I Hate God, Mastodon, and Cage the Elephant. So definitely go check those out. They are well worth your time. And now, with all that out of the way, let's get on with the episode and talk about Snowpiercer. You are listening to Fruitless, a podcast hosted by me, Josiah Sutton. This is episode 59, Pierce the Snow, featuring Jacob Dallas Main of the Socialist Shelf. Hello everyone and welcome to another exciting episode of Fruitless. I'm Josiah, you know me, and today I am joined by Jacob Dallas Main. Hello.
What's up? Hello.
Jacob from the Socialist Shelf. Do you want to give a quick little introduction who you are in case somebody's not familiar with you or the Socialist Shelf?
Yeah. So I, along with Lenore Olson, we host a podcast called Socialist Shelf. We talk about books. Mostly we clown on them. We joke about them. Try to actually get some socialist analysis in there once and again. But, the bits come first, I think, is what we say. But and me and Lenore are both socialist organizers in Atlanta and anti-war organizers. But super excited to be here because, like I said, we talk books, but Snowpiercer, what we're going to talk about, is a movie that I really love and have a lot of thoughts about. And it doesn't fit inside the scope of our show. So you are giving me a great opportunity here.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that was it. That was what I reached out to you specifically. It was like, okay, what's something that you can't talk about in the format of your show that you've been itching to talk about?
There's a graphic novel of Snowpiercer, but it's so different that there's just really no comparison.
Yeah, I was peeking at that just on Wikipedia before we started recording, and then as soon as I saw the 5 different names of the parts or whatever, I was like, this is basically a different story entirely.
There's another train, and they have planes, and at one point they get the train and it can crawl off the tracks because it has treads. It's cool. It's just a different thing.
Yeah. I mean, especially because of how much, we'll get into that the train becomes such a metaphor for Bong Joon Ho in this movie that it having legs and walking off to me is just funny because I don't know what to do with the metaphor then.
Yeah, it doesn't quite hold up the same way.
Maybe before we dive right into the plot or whatever, you had said that this was been one of your favorite movies for a long time. So maybe what's kind of your personal relationship to this movie?
Yeah. So when I first watched this movie, I was probably 15. It wouldn't have been out for very long, 15 or 16. And I was raised super evangelical. So pretty much Christian content and the Christian milieu of acceptable stuff, we were one of the households where Harry Potter wasn't really a thing. We were at that level, right? So I'm getting into my mid late teens, and I'm okay, I'm gonna experience some real stuff, be a real rebel or whatever. And so I'm just watching movies, and I just come across Snowpiercer. I know for a fact I did not watch it. I know for a fact I torrented it or whatever when I watched it. Or pirated it, and I probably was a little blurry or whatever. And I remember just seeing it and just being blown away. Partially just because of that background. I just never seen anything like it before. But also I was I remember thinking, is this a really crazy movie or am I just not seeing anything? And the answer was both, because it is a crazy movie. And I've just always really loved it since then. I also have to confess, I just have a massive crush on Chris Evans. Very nice to look at, Tilda Swinton has always been a favorite of mine as well.
Yeah.
So like just fantastic. So you just have this great cast, you have this great action, and then the actual metaphor about like class and everything is so great on its surface, but actually when you get into the details of it, it stays like really good and solid, even when you start to parse things out. And I find that to be really impressive. And I also just like Bong Joon Ho's other work, of course, like Parasite, Nocta, and stuff. And I haven't seen the new one yet, Mickey 17, but I'll catch it at one of these days.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get around to that new one. My relationship to the movie is like I came to it later on. I actually saw it for the first time in 2020, like during pandemic.
We were locked in a train of your own or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. And I watched it because I wanted to watch more from Bong Joon Ho because, of course, Parasite came out the year before. And like, I don't know, Parasite came out at just the right time when I was like I was kind of like returning to film as like an art form of like I want to take seriously. And so Parasite was just one of those movies that actually kind of helped me like fall back in love with it as a medium or whatever. So of course I was, going back to his previous stuff. And I mean, I really liked Snowpiercer when I saw it, but it is one of those movies that kind of worms its way into your brain. So it was actually fun to rewatch it this time because I remembered it way better than I thought I did. And also it just like, I had, I think, been chewing on this movie for like 5 years. And so I think it's fun to get back into it here.
Yeah, there's just a lot of little things that happen in it that are very particular. Just little characters that are there for like 30 seconds. Like the slick bald guy who said like with the machine gun and like the teacher or like the guy who makes the protein blocks. Just people who just show up, like just little moments that just kind of stick in your head.
Yeah, not to mention I forgot how good the action scenes in this are too. They're fucking amazing. I mean that, we'll get to it, but that initial scene with the they don't have any bullets realization is fucking awesome.
Like the shootout where they're like shooting across the train. The train's like bending in on itself. Oh my God.
Oh man. Yeah, I thought this one would be a good one to kind of go through the plot beat by beat. Usually I like to just like throw a synopsis at the beginning and then just see where the conversation goes. But the movie itself is organized in this very linear fashion, like very literally linear fashion.
Moving up the train. It's a 1001 car train and they're moving through all of it.
And I love that because it turns into like Bong Joon Ho's like his class analysis is like going into each new chunk of the train they're going into is where he places a part of society in the class system. And, I think one of the most interesting parts of that, which we'll get to, is eventually like the middle of the train, where the production of ideology is happening, the education system, the kind of hints at religion and stuff like that. But, of course, we start this movie at, so the big picture setting is that it is in a near future where attempts to fix climate change by like injecting the atmosphere with something to cool it down results in an ice age that, kills theoretically all life on Earth. And so the only people left are those who took shelter in this giant train that goes all across the world.
If you've read like Elizabeth Colbert's like Under a White Sky or something like that, like this is a real idea to cool the earth down with chemicals because it's like, well, we're going to just keep burning fossil fuels. So I've got a better idea. So it's actually interesting. It's a climate apocalypse where everything's frozen, but it is done by these governments because they want to keep burning fossil fuels is kind of the assumption there. At least that is what the actual real life proposals for that kind of thing boil down to. Yeah. We can keep burning them if we just start throwing stuff in the sky that we have no idea, like calcium nitrate and stuff. And it's like, well, that could go poorly. Obviously, we got to stretch the science here a little bit because like, the movie doesn't care how accurate it is scientifically, but like the concept is there,
I mean, I think that's a good thing to point out at the very top here is like, this is a genuine climate solution that gets floated by, serious people, unfortunately.
The Gates Foundation is spending money on researching it right now.
Yeah. The thought process being if we kind of like replicate what volcanoes do, we could just do that, block out the sun for a bit and stop the greenhouse effect.
And if we do that, I get to like hang out with like Chris Evans on a train. So I see like,
I think this movie's a strong defense of that position.
Yeah. Yeah, it ends poorly because like they freeze and there's just this one guy, and we learn more about him later, who had a
Yeah.
train he had happened to build, the rattling arc, which is so cool.
Mhm.
That just circles the world. It does like a lap of the world every year. And this machine like is just self-perpetuating, at least, we're supposed to think it is. It can just go on forever. And like over 1,000 people or whatever can live on it. We don't have an
Yeah.
exact number, but it's not huge. It's like about 1,000 folks who live on this train. And we see from the beginning, well, we start at the back of the train and the film moves forward. It rarely moves backwards. It's just this dingy, dark, messed up back of the train, the absolute bottom rung of society.
Yeah, and you can kind of feel the outrage. Like the movie does a good job of making you feel the outrage that the people in the back of the train would feel as they're moving forward, because you spend a good, like, I don't know, 20 minutes, half hour of the movie in that grimy back of the train. And so that when you start moving forward, it's like it makes you pissed off because
You're
you
like,
can
what the
just
hell?
see it's like, oh yeah, there's fucking fish here. They have an
Yeah.
aquarium. They have a greenhouse.
No, it's funny because there's like earlier in the movie when they're yelling, like they want different stuff. Octavia Spencer's character yells, "We want chicken," and you almost laugh. You're like, "There's no chicken left." And then, yeah, no, there actually is. They have like slaughterhouses with chicken and like cows and stuff somehow.
Yeah,
Um,
later on, they're able to give everyone like a boiled egg, you know?
yeah, they have more than enough to go around. They're knocking those over, shooting over them. Yeah. And it clearly is, obviously you can imagine the system being fragile, but
Mhm.
there is more than what they get, which is these same, like, they call them protein blocks, and it's basically looks like congealed jello or something like
Yeah,
that.
just black
Yeah, it's like
tar.
gross and like kind of gummy. And you find out later it's just like bugs just mashed
Yeah,
together, basically. And that's just all they have eaten for the 17 years they've been on this train.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's just everyone's wearing dark clothes and is wearing heavy clothes because you can tell it's cold back there. It's not
Hmm.
well heated. You have armed guards that are staring everyone down. They've got these kind of rituals they go through. But what I will say is it does very well is in the little time we have, it humanizes these people at the back of the train really well.
Yeah, really well. Yeah.
Like they're still hanging out and like they're rolling barrels around and one of them is jumping up and riding on the barrels for fun and like they're chasing a kid around. There's a guy back there who does charcoal art that he's really good at. Like there's still these human expressions. Like these are still people that are, you go to the most oppressed slum in the world or whatever. There's people are still making culture and living and
Yeah,
in
there's
the
life
time
happening.
we spend. Yeah, we see that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I mean, that is a great point that it does a really good job, because I think that the way this movie is, the way it's very like beat by beat, going forward, plot driven, like how it is, it would be very easy to just kind of brush over
Yeah.
that part and kind of half-ass it because everybody's kind of waiting for the action. And I think Bong like does a great job in really, really making you care about the characters before, the revolution starts.
Yeah. The Curtis Revolution, led
The
by
Curtis
Chris
Revolution.
Evans, Curtis Everett. It's funny when you read about Bong Joon Ho talking about this movie. He said one of their biggest problems in costuming is trying to make Chris Evans look malnourished because he's so clearly not, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and they didn't rely on what the Captain America approach
Yeah.
of just CGIing him to make him look really,
Yeah.
malnourished or whatever. No, they,
And at the end of the day, yeah, you can still tell he's built like a truck, but like
Yeah.
he's this guy that's been on the train. He lived 17 years on Earth and 17 years on the train. Like this almost perfect equilibrium of memory here. And he's sort of seen as a leader by everybody but himself. He does not want to be. He has, people listen to him. You've got a bunch of these like little characters who you probably don't even remember their name by the end of it. But you've got Edgar.
Yeah.
And you've got just all and then there's Gilliam, who is John Hurt, who is the official leader of the back of the train. And he is basically and he's basically like he's missing a limb and is very giving a very John Hurt performance.
Yeah.
Kind of very just like crackly or whatever voice. And you like get right off the bat, you see this just like they're planning this rebellion, but also you have this moment you really see why they're gonna rebel because you have them come back, investigate, take a couple kids, basically. One of them from the Octavia Spencer character, Tanya. I don't think she gets the last name. Tanya.
Yeah, Tanya.
They take their kids, and then this guy tries to fight back, and they put his arm outside the train for 7 minutes, so it freezes while like Tilda Swinton shows up as like the freakiest like middle manager in history, and just gives the worst monologue, like most chilling monologue. Like, just she's got like dentures and is wearing like colorful coat. And Tilda Swinton said like she studied like really annoying politicians. Like she didn't even say like the evilest. She studied the most annoying politicians.
Yeah.
There's some guy in Italian politics she was pulling from specifically, and she nails it. Like she is a type of press secretary here that is just
yeah. I mean, the way like, you know, her catchphrase kind of at this point, at the end of every sentence is the "so it is," right?
So it is.
Which is, you know, part of this broader, like, I don't know, this like reoccurring notion of like hierarchy, like almost like an Aristotelian understanding of hierarchy, that it always is emphasized of like, this is natural, this is everybody's got its place. And so like, you know, while his arm is freezing, they put a shoe on his head to be like, look, isn't it ridiculous when the foot tries to pretend it's a head, you know?
Because he threw the shoe at
that's right. Yeah.
Trying to get his kid back. And she says, this is not a shoe. She's like thinking, size 10 chaos, you know? Which great line.
Yeah.
Even more impressive because like Bong Joon Ho had never directed a film in English before. And, you know, he's not the sole writer on this. But like the fact that he's working and directing with these actors so well in not his first language, just he gets props for that, as well as the writers and the actors, of course. But yeah, she gives this whole speech of like, be a shoe, know your place. That's how we survive. And she does this hand motion where she says everything needs to be in its particular place. She does this weird hand motion where she sticks her hand forward and twists it. And you see multiple characters do it throughout the movie. And it doesn't pay off till the end what that means.
Yeah. And so, that catchphrase, "so it is kind of like part of, I think, to me, that like ideological structure there. Cause this is how it is, you know? And like you had said, studying the most annoying politicians, the way she says "so it is" like immediately triggers like my fight or flight. Like, just like, oh, that's the type of, I don't know, middle manager I've had.
And it's like hard not to think of like, cause Bong Joon Ho helped write this, like, put together this script years earlier. And it's hard not to think of, like, I don't know, the shoe getting thrown at Bush or something like that, right? In a scene like this. Moments like that. But yeah, there's this very... And I will say, too, like, if the listener has seen Parasite, but not this, some of the scenes that are shot kind of in the basement with the family where they're really packed together and tight and there's like the flood and stuff. That's the same kind of vibes we get at the back of the train. And the film actually gets progressively brighter as we move forward, except a couple specific scenes.
Yeah.
But yeah, they launched their revolution here and it's super cool.
Yeah, so they've started to realize that I don't remember how they realized this. No, yeah, it's because she drops that line where she's like, put that useless gun away. Right. Yeah. To one of the guards who's about to shoot someone. And Curtis realizes, wait a second, useless gun. I think that was a slip of the tongue. And so he's thinking about risking it, risking them not having, actually trying to push through a revolution because they might not have any ammunition. But I really love the scene because, as the tension is building up, he's like, are we going to do it or not? He knows he has to risk the life of somebody else, to find out whether they don't have ammunition or not. So he's like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to sacrifice myself. So how he does it is he runs up to the front of the crowd, puts the barrel of the gun on his head, and then pushes the trigger himself. Goes, they don't have any ammunition, and crowd pushes forward. Fucking awesome.
And his friend yells, they have no bullets, and then they all yell, they have no, and they just and they use the term specifically. Edgar says earlier in it, or Edgar and Curtis are talking, he says, I think bullets are extinct. And it's actually interesting because that's a term that's used multiple times in the film. It's extinct to refer to objects. Later they said, I thought eggs were extinct, later you hear, that part was extinct, right? Because they have no capacity to make anything new on the train. Right. Everything is coming from the train, or like apparently, they suck up some ice to make water. But aside from that, it's all internal. The train is the world. So things are going extinct. So that's But it actually is interesting because this supposed failure of the system, now it's a little more complicated, we learn later on, but this supposed issue with this sort of ruling elite, the fact that they've expended their resources in repression leads to the capacity of a future rebellion to be successful, which I think is interesting too. Those old rebellions actually, whether or not they failed, actually kind of softened them up, you know?
Yeah,
now, later we find out they had a little bit of bullets left, but I kind of get the impression that like they didn't have a bunch, you know? Like they would have loaded for summer, you know?
Yeah, because I don't buy that they let that happen. Like they were giving no bullets because they were trying to start off the insurgency. Like that alone was the explanation, because I don't know, there's a lot of easier ways to trigger an trigger some sort of insurrection like that than to hope that they'll eventually figure out they don't have bullets, you know?
and for those, you know, it's later in the film, but they talk basically of Wilford, the head of the train, basically implies that he's kind of pulled all the strings from the beginning, and we don't know how much of that is true or isn't. But there is an element of controlled opposition, but I think there's also an element of just like, oh, well, I was in control the whole time, and it was more like contingency than it was like, oh, this is exactly how I wanted it to go. Because like Curtis made these plans, right? Like, you know,
it's not. I mean. Yeah, so I mean, we're revealing the ending here kind of a bit at the beginning here, but I think it's worth kind of going into, like, as we move forward, kind of asking how that worked, because Wilford, you know, claims that he was in cahoots with Gilliam, the actual leader, like we had said, who's like, you know, missing some limbs, and the technical leader, while Curtis is like the actual de facto leader, you know, so he'd been in cahoots, and then they had set up these insurrections in order to thin the population to keep things, you know, working within the train. And I think it is a good question to ask, like, how much is that just what he's saying in that position at the, like, I think, like, for me, what I took away from that is the way in which a capitalist establishment can use an insurrection to re-solidify its power. This is something we did an episode last year about If We Burn, the Vincent Bevins book, and this is something Bevins gets into a lot, is like the way in which some stuff like the Arab Spring, you know, resulted in generally the opposite of what the protesters intended. You know, so I do think there is something being said, especially when this is coming out and everything. I suspect that's on the mind a little bit, you know, the failed kind of protest movements of, you know, the Arab Spring or, I
mean, Korea has seen a handful. So, you know, Bong Joon Ho's own life. I also just have to say, Vincent Bevins is a friend of the pod. He's been on Socialist Shelf.
That's so cool. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, brilliant. We talked about his book, but he's just very funny. He threw out like made some jokes about V for Vendetta, and like he references it several times in that book, and so we talk about V for Vendetta for a little bit. Yeah, he's a cool guy. But
that's good to know. I might have to reach out to him now. That's good to know.
Yeah, he's emailed him, and he was like, "Yeah, well, why not?" So, you know, but absolutely. So they are pushing forward, and this action scene here is super cool because it's like a mob type nature to the violence, right? You see these core characters like Curtis and Edgar fighting. You see them running around. You see Tanya knocking people over, but you also just see a lot of kind of unnamed characters just shoulders down, kind of throwing themselves. You see this guy that I don't think is named at all, who is just Gilliam's bodyguard, who just has a bunch of tattoos and just does parkour moves. It's just it's like one of their guys. It's super cool. When I was watching with my husband last night, I kind of made the joke that like, if this is kind of like if you've ever been in like a mass protest or a situation where things are like really tense, there's just like always some like weird guy who does something cool, and it's like it's just that guy, you know. It's the guy who, you know, when I went in 2020 in Atlanta, like there was just some guy who was like wearing like the coolest outfit I've ever seen, who climbed the letters of the CNN center and like was on top of the C, posted up with a flag. Like he's just that guy. We don't really know much about him. Yeah. He's just a guy that for some reason has a tattoo that says surrender or die. And then when he like puts a knife to your throat, he shows you surrender and then shows you die. Like just that's just like, he's another one of these films like guys that like is not super well developed, but is just like cool as hell. Yeah. And you also have the one-armed man. You know, his arm was destroyed, and he's like throwing himself around and fighting. Yeah, and they fight this giant jailer. You know, and the scene is very the different violence in the different scenes are shot very differently, and this one is a very mob, very impact not a lot of cutting or shooting or
Mhm.
even throwing. It's all just very like kinetic. In a way that
Yeah.
later it's bloodier or later there's like more bullets. It's like every scene almost has like a focus of what the violence is built around. And in this case, it is this mob outpouring of rage.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a great point. Is yeah, this isn't shot the way like the scene with the scene like with the torches, the
Yeah.
axes, like stuff like that is shot more like it looks like a medieval battle or something, even though it's in a train, in the context. But it's more that feel, as this, yeah, really has more that mob feel. Like that like mosh pit kind of like
Yeah.
crowd pushes forward kind of feel. Yeah.
Absolutely. And their plan is basically at this point, they're like, we can get through the first few gates, but we can't open it past then. But there is this guy, Namgung Minsu, I think is his name. And he designed the train or designed the lock system, Namgung did.
Yeah.
And he is now in this kind of like prison slash detox facility because he's addicted to this drug, Cromwell. And if we break him out and we offer him drugs to get us through the entire train, he's going to unlock him. And it's this guy that only speaks. It's who's that? It's Kim Ho Song is playing him, and he's just playing this guy who just does not give a shit about anything. Is like looks down on everybody around him. He's got 2 cigarettes left, and they're the last 2 cigarettes in the world. And the first thing he does is he like fires one up. Just cannot be bothered about anything except Cromwell, the drug, and he gets his daughter out, who is also just kind of doesn't really like become very important till later, but is kind of around.
Yeah, she's just kind of she's just kind of observing. But I did want to mention Kang-ho Song, because those who are Bong Joon Ho fans also would know him obviously from Parasite, Memories of Murder, The Host, etc. He's fantastic.
I think he's in. Yeah, I want to say he's in another movie as well with Bong Joon Ho. I'm not sure. He's great though. He's in the drug he's addicted to is just like this kind of industrial runoff. It's unclear exactly what it does.
Yeah, it looks like charcoal or something like that, but they sniff it.
You can use it as a bomb.
Yeah, apparently you can use it as a bomb. Yeah, Mark, keep that in mind in the back of your head.
I know you can't get it on the streets of Atlanta. I've tried.
I'm always asking people, where is it?
You come around here asking for Cromwell, they're gonna be like, you're too advanced. I don't know.
Yeah, just too advanced of a drug addict.
And his daughter too, Yona, this is another element where every now and then the movie is just like, okay, we're not that worried about this being realistic. Like she has some kind of clairvoyance going on, maybe, question mark. It doesn't matter that much though. It's kind of weird that they throw it in there because it matters like twice in the movie and then it doesn't really alter the plot significantly.
Yeah.
But she is this kind of dreamer, and I think that's what's important.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing is that, I mean, both of them really do represent like, I don't know, like a very, the imagination of a revolution, like they're the ones that feel like a Mark Fisher stand in some sense, right? Because they're the ones that are like, yeah, you've got the psychedelic side, but then you've also got this like what's going on outside the train. Like that's their emphasis throughout the movie is like, while everybody's thinking about forward, backward, they're the ones always going to the windows and looking outside. It's the, can we imagine something outside of the existing structure?
That's how you know it, because every time they go to talk to Kang Ho Song, he always is whispering something about children of men in this. He's like, this connects to children of men somehow. In true Mark Fisher fashion. Always will. But I also think there's an element of the fact that Yona was born on the train. She's like born right at the beginning. And she is someone who can visualize things beyond kind of the scope of what they can, whether that be literal clairvoyance or she's just very intuitive. And the fact that she can see a world beyond the train is interesting because it's like only someone who is born in this system can actually visualize something beyond it, right? The other one
that's very Fisher, actually.
Yeah, because those of them, it's fascinating because those of them born in the old world, their only conception of something better is a regression, which is literally impossible, right?
Yeah.
Like you will not because like Curtis in his head, what is he saying? Well, it would be great to have like steak like we did back in the day, right?
Yeah, and that's never going to be the case, really.
Yeah,
I mean, I
not,
guess it. Yeah,
not So what's going to happen is there's going to be a new synthesis, right? But clearly not this. It can clearly not, whatever 21st century was like. It's going to be something different if it's anything at all. And so like Yona is able to like conceptualize that to some extent.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really good point. It's also around this point is where they pass through the I don't know, the machine that makes the protein cubes that they're all eating, and they find out it's made of bugs. So that's in that moment here.
Another one of the just weird guys who shows up for 15 seconds is this guy,
great.
Paul, who's like hanging from the roof, and he's like, they're like, "Are you alone?" He goes, "Alone and in the zone," and then you never see him again. It's just like
I loved this because I don't know. I feel like I you can tell that he's just become his work. You know what I mean? As a guy, like this is it. He's been alone with just being the guy that makes the cubes for so long, or the protein blocks, that it's just who he is. Yeah.
And they're like mad. They're like, "You eat this shit? You made us eat this shit?" And he's like, "I eat them too." And he just takes a bite out of it. He doesn't care. And it's interesting, because they established at one point there are first class passengers, there's coach passengers, and there's what they call freeloaders. We don't know exactly how it worked, but as you go to the middle, these people that are kind of working for a living are clearly the coach, but they're not like, I don't know, to use like the Marxist term, like lumpen proletariat or whatever. They're not like the furthest outcasts of society like we have at the bottom. They have jobs, whether it be, cutting up the sushi or being a doctor or this guy, there's still even a range within them. You can tell, like the teacher's clearly a rung above the guy who makes the food. But she's, further back in the train than the guy who's like doing dentistry on the other guy. It's interesting. How that works. But it's another scene too of like, I almost like the world building is almost like ruined for me by like the modern internet, because it's like very like Wikipedia brained or whatever. Like, how does this fit into the like expanded universe or whatever? How does this fit into the MCU? But like this kind of thing is world building in a way that's not like prescriptive. And now we're going to sit down and talk to you for 30 pages about exactly where everything is. And like, instead it's like letting you kind of live and breathe it a little bit. And it does that very effectively.
Yeah. I also really like as we're seeing the kind of class positions moving upward, because I do really like this, like very careful delineation of like a lower middle class versus like a complete lower class. Like you start to see, okay, the more professionalized work that exists, it's a little higher up, but you're still at the back of the train, I found that really interesting. And then from there we go into, this would be when we get to the schoolhouse, right?
Well, the battle is next, actually.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah. The battle before right. So next up here is, let's see, how does this play out again?
Basically, they are like, if we get a little further, we'll get to the water section. We hold the water, we hold the train.
That's right. That's
their idea. But between them and the water is just a big gang of like masked thugs. Like they give you just like kind of like black shirts vibes or whatever. Like they have this vibe of like vigilantes almost. They don't even feel like soldiers. And they have a live fish that they cut and wet their axes with. Which, first of all, to these people from the back, this unbelievable show of waste.
Yeah, decadence.
Decadence. But it's also just this like ritual of violence. Yeah. And they are accompanied by Minister Mason, that Tilda Swinton character. And she's like, "This is the end for you guys. But first, Happy New Year, because we just crossed the special bridge. The New Year Bridge, and we're about to go into a tunnel that lasts for like 2 minutes, and all these guys have night vision goggles, and y'all are all about to get fucked up." This scene is like super, whereas the last scene was kinetic and like frantic, this scene is super bloody. There's like blood squirts on the camera and on the characters. There's more slow motion. You see more specifically what actions different characters are taking. There's still a mob element to it, but you can pick people out more individually. The cameras are in longer shots. And then you get this moment where it goes dark, and this is one of like it doesn't make perfect sense, but it's super cool.
Yeah, them having the torches. Yeah, I guess it doesn't. Where do they get the torches? I'm not sure, but it looks cool as hell.
Just yeah, because they turn out the lights and they just Curtis remembers earlier this kid stole a match and he was like, bring the fire, and they just have it and it's awesome. And there's this
so
battle
good.
where you're like looking through the night vision goggles and like just this beautiful, brutal scene that ends in Curtis one having to let his friend Edgar die, which is
Right.
horrible. This like his kind of protege, and capturing Minister Mason. And this at this point, like they've beaten the main like military force at this point. Like this is actually like most of what the front section actually has to offer at this point. Like they've actually they're actually kind of the power on the train now. Theoretically at least, but he's like, and at this point you actually have Gilliam say, he's like, you know, we probably don't even need to like go forward. No one's even gotten this far. You know, we've got 20 train cars now. We'll hold this. You know, we have the water. And Curtis is like, you know, Curtis, because he's Red Linen, says says no, we have to like seize the machinery of the state, right? Like I mean, I'm kidding only a little bit.
No, I mean like literally, yeah. We got to get to the engine.
We have to get the engine, or they'll regroup and retake what we've struggled for.
Yeah, because I think like with the water thing, it feels a little more like it's like the way a strike functions or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Is we can negotiate now that we have control of this thing. As in the more like Leninist sense, Curtis is trying to go like, no, we're gonna like seize the power of the means of production, the state, whatever.
Gilliam with his trade union consciousness. I don't know.
Yeah.
Got an element. Yeah, and at this point, like this is like, oh my god, Tilda Swinton for like the next 15 minutes is just one of my favorite performances in a movie ever, and I want to punch her. Like she's so good.
So they're able to hold her hostage and kind of use her to continue moving forward. But yeah, and this is also though when she reveals that there's multiple water pumps like up ahead. Like you just have one, you know, which it's, I think you could probably make this comparison to the trade unionism kind of thing, like we were saying here, where it's like, no, it's good. You seize that control, but like, you know, there's that's one industry of many. That's one, you know, only one piece of the puzzle. You don't actually wield complete control over the system anymore, you know?
Yeah. And that's now where after we walk through some of the more middle section stuff, also middle class, we get to the education scene.
Yeah. And this is such an interesting scene because color wise, it's, you know, this is the brightest part of the movie. Because like things actually get a bit gray again once you get up toward the front of the train, but it's this kind of middle area where ideology is being produced. So you have like, you know, this teacher is teaching all the kids like, you know, how the train works and how great Wilford is, and you see like the masks that all the kids are wearing, like they have like paper masks that they're all wearing, and it feels like there's these gestures at this representing the ideology of the system. So you have like religious looking masks, you have whatever. So it's the education system, it's the religious systems. This is where the ideology that defends the existing structure is coming from, is in this middle here.
Yep. And you have, and the teacher, she's Alice. It's Alison Pill. You know, she's I don't know why, but like I realized immediately that she was from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. She's Kim Pine. Movie. But I think that's a very different type of character. But she is just like, she's pregnant and like wearing this flowery dress and singing and sing-song voice and talking to these kids. And it's really unsettling. And like, and then you have the kids kind of repeating like the ideology they were told. Like one of the kids is like, well, I heard all the back section people are like lazy freeloaders. And, you know, Tilda Swinton with like a gun in her back is like, no, they're actually quite lovely people.
They're very nice people.
I'm kind of like imagining like Tilda Swinton like is like this middle manager or like press secretary, like a press secretary of a presidency or something like that.
Yeah.
It's so she's so cowardly how quickly she's willing to just like flip over. Like she does not, no matter how much she talks about like order, it's like she's like, well, if you get to Wilford, you're gonna have to kill him. Like she's ready to.
She's like, I kill Wilford, just don't kill me.
Yeah, when I'm doing this, I'm like imagining one of like, the Doge guys or like Trump's press secretaries. I'm like, they wouldn't give a shit in a second if like they thought that they were threatened in the least bit. They behave this exact same way.
Yeah, they're slimy. It's just very don't actually believe in anything really.
But she clearly does believe enough to enjoy the songs because they're singing, what is it? What happens if the engine stops? We all freeze and die.
Yeah.
Have this whole section.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on, I think, in this specific scene of like, I think it being like the ideological core of it. Cause I mean, there's kind of like, the constant gesturing of her being pregnant and gesturing at that a lot feels like a real emphasis to like, like a reproductive futurism being part of the ideology. Like it has all the little components of capital I ideology going on.
Yeah, they say rumble, rumble, rattle, rattle, it will never die. But here's what's interesting to me. At this point in the movie, you have seen, I think, 3 times them refer to things they had when they started on the train that are now extinct. Like, it 100% will die. Like, even if Wilford is forever. This train, I don't know if it's got 10 years left. I don't know if it's got 20 years left. I don't know if it's got 1 year left. But this train isn't actually going to circle the earth forever.
Right,
And that's like self-consciously, like I think part of the thing too is like they're perpetuating the system. But like the system isn't going to always work. And that's also super like the idea that like, because Wilford wants to participate, and we can talk more about him, but like wants to put forward this is how things are. But it's like, well, this is how things have been for 17 years. And clearly, like, even if this order stays perfect and we all stay in our place, like the train's going to break. It's going to happen. During that battle, we ran into 3 snowbanks and all got thrown on our asses, which is really cool. Like this thing doesn't live forever. So like even the kids saying it will never die, like it so clearly will. So it's ideology. And also like, it's been done to death, but kids like reciting something together will never not be creepy if done properly. And it always works.
It's a great way to just communicate really quickly. Like this is what the society is trying to force its young to believe.
Yeah.
It always works. It always works.
And then they get in a shootout with a pregnant lady.
Yeah, so this is another great action scene in this as well, because this is when some boiled eggs for New Year's are brought out to the kids, and then it seems like they're brought out into the back.
Yeah.
And, everybody's getting a boiled egg. You get like those in the back of the train being like, I thought eggs were extinct. And after that line, we get, the guy who's wheeling them in goes, what else people thought was extinct? And the guns come out. The guns are buried under the eggs, and they have bullets now.
And this character is played by Thomas Lamarcus. And do you know what his name is actually in the film, like credited in the film?
What?
It's Egghead. Because he's bald and he has eggs.
So funny. That's great.
And he's another one of just like Wilford's like guys that just kind of works for him. He just got, look, the working class revolution has its own like kind of group of weird guys that you don't remember their names. And so does Wilford.
So does the forces of reaction. Yeah.
So you have this like, Curtis manages to get a gun, and at this point, he just caps Tilda Swinton like, sorry, you're done.
Yeah, you're done. You're not going to be. Well, yeah, because she then immediately, tries to turn again on them because it's like, because she doesn't believe in anything.
No. And then you get to have like this scene where they're driving the train. The train kind of goes around a bend so you can see the back half of the train from the front half of the train. And they're like trading fire, Wilford's forces with Curtis. And it's just this super sick action sequence where like the glass, you have one point where the bullet hits right in front of Chris Evans's face and just cracks, and he doesn't even flinch. And it's like, look, I'm not made of stone. That's cool as hell.
I think there's something kind of subtle happening there too. Cause don't we see that there are bullet holes in the windows, right? So the air outside isn't toxic anymore.
No. Yeah.
That's like a subtle thing, I think, that it is trying to communicate for later.
Yeah. And Kang Ho Song's character notices that. He like even sees one of the snowflakes and kind of is like staring at it. And later on he says, that's the type of snow that's about to melt.
Yeah. I don't remember if this was at this point or a bit later, but he points out, at some point around this time looking down, and they'd been every year looking down at a crashed plane.
Yep.
And this time round, he saw that it's not just like the tail of the plane or whatever sticking
It's
out.
more
More
of
of it's revealed. The snow's melting.
Mm.
There's something outside.
One thing I found interesting too is he like knows a ton about snow because like a woman that's now dead, it was an Inuit woman that like was on the train, and she like passed on her knowledge to him. And like for all we know, there are like literally no Inuit people left alive after that woman, but that like knowledge is what's going to potentially save humanity. And I think there's something cool there too.
That's a really cool detail. I didn't catch that.
There's something like really neat about like that old knowledge being passed on and like mattering, even if the people are all dead.
Right. Yeah.
Or potentially mattering if used properly. Right.
Yeah, right.
Up to you. You have agency in these moments. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we get like to the front section here, and they're just like living like the Capitol and Hunger Games, basically.
Yeah.
Like,
it's just pure debauchery. Pure.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like drug dens, and I love the I love the drug dens. You have like just Yona. She's just jumping down, grabbing all the drugs and putting them into her jacket. You know, you've got like guys dressed up as like angels at a rave. You know, you go through these cars, like these very wasteful like cars that are like, you know, a whole car dedicated to like 3 salon chairs or whatever, you know. You know, one has to presume there's a lot of cars you kind of have to assume there's a lot of cars you don't see in the movie.
Right.
Because it says at one point there's 1,001 cars on the train. So, you know, we don't see them all, but, you know, can have fun imagining what kind of cars there are. Is there a basketball court? Is there a bowling alley? But regardless, then you have another really vicious fight sequence in a sauna. Which they have with this one guy who just refuses to die, who has always baffled me.
I don't know what to make of him.
He's credited as Franco Elder is his name. And there's another guy named Franco Younger that dies earlier in the movie that Yona kills because she like flips up the spear into his stomach or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And like just a kind of nothing character. They're just kind of standing there in suits rather than the like jackets. But this guy, Franco Elder, is just like barely says anything, and he's vicious, and he's a good shot, and he's strong, and he's willing to kill front section people. I don't know. Is this just like the mad dog of the regime? Like what what's this guy supposed to be?
I'm not sure, but I think that could be it. I think his willingness to kill people in the front could kind of represent sort of a moral debasement of the upper class, that he's willing to kill his own. He doesn't, you know. There's kind of like, as the back represents this like constant ongoing like solidarity, the front he's you know, cruel and self-centered and
yeah. And this is another guy that's like, you know, he's basically superhuman, and this is like another one of those things in the movie that he's just kind of like, it's not quite explained what's going on here. But yeah, they have like this huge fight where he manages to take down several of them. Including Tanya, and almost kills Curtis before he's just choked out and stabbed and stuff. And he still manages to get up later on, which is, you know, why you always, if you're choking a guy out in a movie and you know you're in a movie, you got to choke him out for a few seconds longer. He might be faking it. You don't know. I've always, the only movie I've ever heard properly address this is, what's the movie? Zombieland. You have to double tap.
Oh, yeah. Got to double tap, yeah.
That would have saved them a lot of pain. But you at this point lose Tanya, which like we haven't said a lot about Octavia Spencer's character in this, but she is looking for her child. She doesn't actually have a lot to say, but she's just remarkably expressive and visceral this whole movie.
She's really memorable despite not having a lot of lines, like you're saying. Like you remember her for sure.
No doubt. Yeah, she's got the one eye that's like really squinted, and you know, she doesn't say a whole lot, or hers, but she is, but yeah, when she dies, Curtis like holds up this like charcoal drawing of her kid, and it's, you know, it hits, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they've basically lost their whole crew at this point. Like, it's basically just Curtis and then these two that he pulled out of prison, that they're not really even ideologically committed to what's happening anymore.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of the Oh yeah, because I mean, I think we skipped earlier, but Gilliam also gets shot.
Oh yeah, a lot of them get shot after the Egghead massacre.
Yeah, and so this is also where kind of like a guilt is getting built into this too. Like Curtis is feeling a lot of guilt because a lot of people ended up dead here, and it's just him toward the front. And but from here they approach the very this would be when they're arriving at the front after the sauna, right?
Yeah. They pass through. You have Curtis just locked in, walking through a rave and just not even flinching, just knocking people over, walking in a straight line. Which is always fun to get from a hero, that just like
determination. Kind of. Yeah.
But he doesn't have that till the end. He has a very, very viscerally emotional scene before he confronts Wilford.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to. So yeah, we get to it, and he's arguing with Namgung about opening the door, because he's like, I'm not going to open this door. Up until this point, he's been opening all the gates. He's like, I'm not going to open this gate. And I'm kind of curious, why does he really explain why he doesn't want to open this specific gate? I mean, I know what he says is he wants to open the gate outside. Mm-hmm. That's
I guess at that point he thinks that they're ready to do it. They found some giant coats in the last room that were basically like some pimp coats, but they'll work outside. And I guess that's the best gate for him to blow open. I'm not quite sure. He has enough chromel now stolen from all those people to blow it open, or maybe he's just decided like it's too much. There's no point. But you have at this point, you have Edgar basically, or Curtis talking about meeting Edgar as a child and being on the train as a 17-year-old before there was any food, before there was even protein blocks, and like there was cannibalism. Like the people were locked in an iron box.
This is one of the scenes I think I remembered from the movie the most, because I think in how it's delivered is pretty heartbreaking too, specifically because Curtis's line is do you know why I hate myself, is because I know what people taste like, and I know that babies taste best. Oh, what a fucking brutal line. But yeah, I it's at this moment, like I think it's interesting because it recontextualizes. You see a lot of people missing limbs in the beginning. And what you think it is what happened to that guy I don't remember the name of, who his arm got frozen off, right? So you think that's just what's been happening this whole time. But it's in this moment that we find that it was Gilliam who was the first one to try to introduce some solidarity at the very early days of the train, while everybody's eating each other, while there's cannibalism going on, where they were about to eat a baby, and before they did that, Gilliam cut his own arm off and said, eat this if you're so hungry.
And Curtis's arm has a big scar where he once tried to chop off his arm, but he
couldn't do it. And so this is like what fucks with Curtis, is that he's like, how can I be a leader? Because I have all my limbs.
Yeah, which when he says that earlier, just kind of like, huh? Like,
yeah, I take it as like maybe he doesn't have enough battle scars or something. Yeah. Is like how he takes it. But no, he's like, I've not sacrificed sufficiently,
And you have, Chris Evans does a great job here, which most Chris Evans movies I've seen are, Captain America, and he doesn't quite get to do all this. So I really appreciated getting to see him just dirtied up, and everyone in this movie too, the whole time, everyone's real gross looking and real wet. Yeah. Like a lot of like sweaty and grimy, and then they do a great job with that. But and he's just like, please open the gate. But then he doesn't have to, because the gate opens and Wilford's like wants to meet with him. So it's at this moment here where he's, after he's kind of given his sense of guilt, his kind of background, we kind of, and I don't know if we had officially said, but yeah, like he said, he met Edgar as a baby. That was the baby that Gilliam sacrificed his arm for, is what was revealed. So Curtis was gonna eat Edgar as a baby, and so that's why he's now feels such an obligation toward Edgar. He's gonna kill him.
Yeah, but so Wilford invites Curtis in, and so they go into the engine room, which is this really bleak metallic room where you see like the kind of, I don't know, very sci-fi looking kind of engine at the front, and then Wilford's cooking steaks.
It's just Ed Harris in a bathrobe.
It's just Ed Harris in a bathrobe cooking a steak.
He's just doing the Truman Show thing again, basically, in a different way, in a much different way. But he's up there cooking steaks, and he's just got this one secretary, and he's just like very like, oh, don't be so dramatic. Come on in.
Yeah.
What's up? I like he multiple times says not to be dramatic, but then he is the most dramatic motherfucker on the train when he gives his monologues.
He's so campy, he's so like, yeah, he's such a dramatic motherfucker.
It's true. It's every like one of the front sectioner people are such like when they talk, they want to be kind of intellectual and smart in a way they really aren't. Like Minister Mason does this at one point earlier. Earlier they ask her, they're like, so why do you only eat fish, 2 months out of the year? Is it because there's not enough? And she goes, oh, enough isn't the question. It's about balance. We wouldn't have any fish left. And it's like, okay, so it is about having enough. Fuck you. Like they all talk like this though. And Ed Harris does it even more as Wilford. He's just like, grand monologues about like the human condition or whatever. And the world is the train and how often, he reveals information and then it's like about Gilliam. And then he's like, oh, don't tell me you didn't know. And it's like, of course, he didn't know. Like, but he's just this guy up here that's been kind of just going batty, minding the train. And if there's, I don't know, there's no one person that he's a good synonym for, but he is the guy at the top of the system. He is the CEO. He's the general. He's the president. He's whatever you want to call it. But he is like the bourgeoisie as one guy. Like he is fully encapsulates in this one individual who, when you get down to it, is like, pretty clever for all things considered. He has an articulatable worldview. He is not fully off his rocker, but like he's just a guy. Completely not good. He's not good at fighting. He's got no special skills. He doesn't seem to have any special, even mechanical skill or understanding of the train. He's just the guy who's in the room and is willing to be the guy in the room.
Yeah. I think, him being like, in the bathrobe and stuff, and cooking the steak, like all those like ways of communicating him as being really banal is, I think, really important to it because it's been so, grandiose the whole time, the ideological stuff about the Great Wilford, this kind of like religious religiosity aimed at the train and about Wilford, and you get to him and he's just like you said, just a guy.
And I think it's cool too that it's not a hoax exactly, like none of it's really a lie. It's just that like it's not like, oh well, there was a grand cabal of this or that. I was like, no, it's like what it seems like. It's just what it seems like is not that impressive. Because the whole time I'm like, there's a guy at the front of the train. It's just a guy. Y'all are all talking about this. And he is. And I also note that like at the beginning of the film, Curtis and Edgar are talking and Edgar's like, what does steak taste like? And Curtis is like, you don't like want to be reminded. It tastes so good. I don't want to talk about it. And then you literally have at the front, Wilford bite into a steak and says, don't you think my position is without drawbacks? Like you think my position is without... literally just eating the thing that this guy at the back of the train, I
spent 17 years thinking about. Yeah.
But it's so bad. And one thing that's interesting though, is he is here to offer Curtis the position that he has. He's basically saying, congratulations, you did it. You overcame every obstacle. You now have the opportunity to be the conductor. You have power now. You, or you can. But to do that, Curtis has to accept the framework of how the train operates. And he has to kind of look back and he sees all them fighting. He sees he sees Franco Elder back on his feet, fighting. And there's the guys from the rave and everything running around. And he's trying to basically sell Curtis on like, no, actually society is a certain way. To have a society is to have inequality. And we need to make it keep functioning. But it is, of course, so self-evidently hollow on multiple levels. Like he has this one part, he goes, very dramatically, we're all prisoners in this great hunk of metal, medium rare, it's like, or another part, his assistant accidentally, like not accidentally, but she lets her gun go off and he freaks out. He's like, oh my God, not in the end. He understands. And then a minute later says the engine is eternal. And it's like, motherfucker, it's not eternal. You just lost your mind when a gun went off in here. This thing can break. It's so effective.
It's amazing how much it is like there's a kind of like dual consciousness he's got going on in his head between like his actual knowledge of like how this thing works as the guy who built it, and seeing it as a finite thing that can break down, and his belief in his own bullshit, his belief in his own, like, the ideology that supports the existence of the thing he's running. And I like that because I think, like, yeah, his line of, like, we're all prisoners in this, you know, and then, you know, medium rare. I like that because it undercuts it, but I also I think there's like kind of a truth to what he's saying, but not in like the way he means it. It's more in the sense of like, yeah, the nature of the way this train is organized means that I'm going to act in a certain class position, and I'm going to defend that position. So I am, in a sense, the quote prisoner to, you know, my decisions are going to be guided by that. And I think there's the implication that he's like, now do you want to, you know, take hold of power here and, you know, be similarly trapped in now you're the upper class.
Yeah. And Curtis has this moment too where like he's for a moment gets to be alone for like the first time since he's been on the train and process all this. But what breaks him out of it is he sees Tanya's child is working the gears of the machine. Like, yeah, the floor gets kind of opened and Wilford's like, oh, well, you know, that part went extinct. He goes, the engine's eternal, but a part went extinct. He goes, but don't worry, we all have our own particular position. And he does the hand motion that both the teacher had done and that Minister Mason, Tilda Swinton character, had done when they said particular position. And it is the action that this child is doing under these gears to make the machine work is moving his hand that way. And you see there are actually two children strapped like into the framework of this machine. And because the machine doesn't run without them. And that shows two things. Obviously, on like the one level, it's this thing isn't going to, like I said it already, but this thing isn't going forever. Its parts are breaking and you are finding weird stop gaps to keep it from going. And eventually you're not going to be able to replace it all. And the second thing is this thing that you think is so necessary, this rattling arc, is literally the gears are lubricated with the blood of children. Like literally with the blood of children of the most exploited people. And you know, he like looks down and just sees this kid who earlier in the movie was, you know, a little reckless, dumbass kid who like, he's like haggling with, and the kid's like, I want to play with a ball for just 1 hour or whatever. This kid earlier. And now this kid is just like, basically his brain's just like broken working on this like gear. Yeah. And it's like Curtis at this moment, the guy he did not used to be 17 years ago, he is now, not through like some kind of random growth, but through literally the experience of struggle, his consciousness has evolved to such a extent that he can literally put his arm into the gears of the machine to save this child and to stop this thing. And sacrificing his arm. Yes. I was going to say that's kind of the nice emotional payoff there to his, like, I never lost my arm. I never sacrificed. You know, at this moment he sacrifices. Yeah. And I think the children being what run the train, I think is kind of interesting because, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the back of the train, you don't really see them doing a lot of work, do they? Like, there's like a point where you see them like rolling barrels around that they'll later use for their like rebellion. So you can kind of imagine they maybe are doing something with that. Yeah. And occasionally they'll like come back to take someone for a particular task if someone knows how to do violin work or as an example we see. But I think also like the production of these hyper exploitable children is probably their main export. That's what I was going to say is I think that's kind of what it communicates is that like, yeah, you do kind of wonder, okay, what is this lower class if it's not being used for labor? Well, it is. It's their children are being taken for labor. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, if you think about the real world, you know, the lowest classes of people, the people that can't even get jobs, you know, you see homeless people every single day in every major city in the United States. Like they exist as kind of a reminder from the system. Like, no, like there isn't a bottom. Like there isn't a place we will catch you. We will let you keep falling. And I think that, you know, I think if we were to, I'm glad we don't, but I think if we were to spend time sitting down for like an hour with like one of the random middle class people on the train, that's probably something they have in their heads is there are people at the back of the train, you know, that eat bugs, you know? Yeah. And you don't have to. This movie is smart enough to know you don't have to do all that because, you know, it's already a 2-hour movie. But yeah, it's very effective and brutal. And it's notable that like, the only way to save this child is to sacrifice what Curtis potentially has earned as this lower class guy that is the first person to walk the length of the train.
Yeah.
He's because, and you could think of an analogy of like, a lower class person who does manage to fight their way to the top. There are examples of that.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
There are also way more people who lie and say they were at the bottom and they fall to the top. J.D. Vance, Hillbilly Elegy. We talked about this. His parents made $110,000 a year in Ohio in 1990. He was not a hillbilly.
No.
But there are people that have like come from nothing. Like it is a thing that has existed. But the only way to come from nothing and then come into power, that does not prove that the exploitation doesn't exist. You have to become the most vicious exploiter of all of them. You have to stand on the skulls of the people who got you there. And Curtis, in this moment, refuses to do that. And he proves, despite all his flaws, he was worthy to be the leader that like Edgar saw him as. He was willing to give his arm. And he is the guy who like manages to doom this machine. And then they blow up the door and the fucking train derails.
Yeah. So they use it to break, the gate that Namgung wants to open. The gate he wants to open, which is out of the train, not forward in the train.
But he doesn't survive it either.
No. They set off the bomb, and it derails the entire train. It causes an avalanche. And one of I love the final scene of this movie because. Yeah, in that last moment we get Yana, is that how it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yana and Timmy. So Timmy was the kid that they got out of the train. Those two are standing outside the wreckage and they look out and they see, and it's really great how it's shot because you don't initially see it either because it's a polar bear. So it's white like the snow. And then you kind of realize it with them. Oh, that's a polar bear. And it's smart filmmaking because this is not like, it doesn't need to give you more than that, because you can piece together from that. If there's a polar bear, that's a predator. Therefore, that means there's a whole ecology that thing is living off of. That means there's life out here.
Yeah.
There's something out here.
And it's also notably, even, you said earlier, you noted the brightness of the scene with the children in the classroom. The only scene brighter than that in the entire movie is this scene. It has so much natural light in it, and it is so blue. The sky, like it is so that, and they're outside, and it's just these two in a very kind of Adam and Eve type of way, even though they're, still both 17 and like, 12-year-old or not even, or like 5-year-old, whatever, how old he is, children. Yeah. But the idea is it's these two young people that are like the new humanity that has a new potentiality, and they are not dead, and they are standing out here and they're breathing the air and they're not freezing. And we can question, well, how would they actually survive but that's not the point. The point is like there is a new way of existing beyond the train, and the idea that the door of the train was a wall is not true. That there is something beyond it, and there is life beyond it. I mean, it's super fucking cool, but it also is just this acknowledgement of like, to fix this problem, you have to derail the train. You have to, the way things function, the way you understand them to function systemically, it has to be different. The idea that the engine is forever, it just can't be. Whatever that engine represents in this, in our society, a sort of a capitalist system of exploitation and production, I think what I would say is what Bong Joon Ho would say, given his interviews. And and it doesn't answer what's next, right? But what you have is this super small child who is from the most exploited section and then was the most exploited child in the most exploited section of the world. And whose mother was like the greatest fighter and taught him all that. Yeah. And then the child of, this more intellectual guy who became disillusioned, and she is a dreamer. And is
the imagination,
and it's these two who are like sort of the impetus of a new humanity, whatever that looks like. And the people who sacrifice for the most part to like stop the train aren't the ones who actually inherit the earth. There's a lot going on there. It's super cool and interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think self-sacrifice is like one of the big moral, I think, driving forces throughout the movie. This is something Bong Joon Ho seems really interested in, is this, because, what Curtis saw as his moral failing was his inability to, to sacrifice, and what produced any solidarity in the back of the train to begin with was self-sacrifice. This comes to it. And so naturally, our protagonists cannot be the ones that leave, I think, that end, represent the end. They have to sacrifice themselves for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where the movie concludes. Unless you want to read the graphic novel sequel, but I don't necessarily recommend it. They find another train. It's a whole thing. It's not, I don't recommend it. Yeah.
It seems maybe it has different stuff on its mind, I think. Maybe.
Yeah, there's a different thing. Because I know some people have said, they were like, oh my God, there's a thing that takes place after the events of Snowpiercer, so we can know what happens next. And I'm like, well, different.
It's just because of how this movie is designed. I just struggle with wanting to do that because of, I think, how on the nose of a metaphor the whole thing is, that I'm not leaving this movie going, what happens next?
Right.
Because I'm like, well, no, this whole thing was representing escaping capital.
Yeah, no, the movie is telling you to do what the
revolution
characters did. Yeah, the movie is telling you to find a way off the train. Right. It's not being prescriptive as how, but it is telling you that, like, there is a train you're on. It is a class society. They say it's forever, and it isn't. And if you continue to exist on it, it's going to break anyway. Yeah. Right? And that's like the world we live in too, right? Capitalism. Okay, say we don't replace it with socialism or anything. It's still going to break, right? Like we are still literally, we're not freezing the earth, but we're frying it. Or maybe we'll throw stuff in the sky and freeze it. Who knows? We're on path to nuclear war. We're on path, like all these different, we create through climate change new viruses and our manner of agriculture is super likely to
completely
cause
unsustainable.
Pandemics. Yeah. So, and to keep the train moving, we're going to have to literally put more children in the gears to turn the wheels.
Yeah.
And the only way to stop it is to put your arm or your body or whatever on the gears of the machine and to visualize a new future and to break out of it. And it's a pretty clear metaphor. He's not pulling any punches here.
No, and I mean, I think going back to the brightness of like the school area too, I think that's an important aspect of it, is because he seems to really like that middle of the train is like not, you could say like the middle class, but I think more specifically it's like the professional managerial class, and it's those who reproduce the ideology. And so like, I mean, one of the things that I think you can kind of read into this movie is like, Barbara Ehrenreich's kind of initial idea there of the PMC is like, you have a choice between which class you align yourself with. If you are that teacher there, you're either reproducing the ideology or you're trying to make them look out the windows.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's something interesting too about Namgung's character, who does come from that middle to later section of the train, and who does have initial reactions to them going, he's like, back of train scum or whatever, even though he's now back of train scum in this prison because he became too bad of a drug addict. And that there is actually like a possibility of that, like of him joining forces with them too, is kind of interesting. There's something there too of him actually bringing the ideas back and like spreading this. There's some interesting, like I said, like when you look at this under a microscope, you find new things that also like fit the metaphor well. And like there are people who will like online try to be like, well, this wouldn't be technically possible because, and it's like, okay, whatever. I'm not really worried about it. But what I do care about is the tightness of the story and the metaphor and the point that it's making, and that it like holds up consistently throughout it. I do think, though, I meant to tell you this earlier, and this is, I think, a really important addition. Do you know what the engine is named in the original graphic novel?
No, I don't.
It's named Olga. And I think that's hilarious.
Oh, that's great.
Olga the train. And I'm just like, it's so funny. It's very
so good.
Olga the train. Imagine if the whole time they had called it Olga. I don't think I would have been able to take it seriously.
They should have done that. Oh, he's just like smacking the side of it. You're like, oh, old Olga.
Old Olga. we had a golf cart I used to drive for my job. We called Bertha that had been running since 1987. So,
oh man, hell yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
it's a dope movie.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot of fun, and also it's interesting. A lot of the cast of the movie has, like Sen said, they had no expectations it would be nearly as successful as it was.
Yeah.
Tilda Swinton really had to be talked into doing it at all.
That's crazy because she does great. I mean,
yeah. No, she apparently had a great time on set. Again, this is just from there, whatever. But originally, she was like, "So the movie's what? You're a train, and I'm a train fascist. Like, what are we talking about here? You know?" But then it's like fucking rips. So you know,
it is kind of funny because this is Bong Joon Ho's like English language debut. This movie, and so it's funny now to me. For anybody to be doubting, like, I don't know about being in this Bong Joon Ho movie because you know he goes on to be like, I feel like a lot of actors would like be jumping over themselves to try to be in a movie he directs.
This Mickey 17 has like Robert Pattinson, Stephen Yeun, a lot of folks. Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, all around, really had fun. I mean, I had fun getting to rewatch it. Not that I couldn't rewatch it on my own, but I always love a good reason.
Like the excuse to it. Yeah.
Do a close look at it. Got myself some ice cream so I could feel the cold with but yeah. I'd say officially the snow has been pierced. It has.
It has, yeah. No, I love this movie. I'm really happy to have had this chance to rewatch it. And if you haven't seen it and you listen to us spoil the entire thing, you should still watch it. I think it's kind of unspoilable. I mean, I think some of the twists like hit pretty hard when you don't know, but I still think the whole movie is really enjoyable. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of watch for the metaphor if you don't know the plot, or if you already kind of know the plot anyway. You could be watching more for the kind of critical analysis that's kind of going into it.
Plus the action alone, like, you know, you're not going to hear from me the way you hear me explain like these people fighting in the dark and like blood splattering. It's still going to look sick as hell when you watch it in the movie. Like,
yeah, it's so good. Yeah. Well, before we wrap up properly here, do you want to plug Socialist Shelf a little bit here?
Yeah. And I really appreciate you having me on. Really appreciate Fruitless and everything you do here. I want I'll plug Socialist Shelf. It is a show with me and Lenore Olson. We get into novels. Every now and then we get into something that's not a novel. Like for some reason we decided to do Hillbilly Elegy because we hate ourselves. But we get into books and literature and we will tell you about them so you can pretend like you've read them. And also you can hear the jokes and you can hear us bring in some actual, like, you know, analysis. And sometimes we rip a book to pieces and sometimes we love it. We also are going to give you a bio on pretty much any author. So we give you kind of a background on the author, the history they're writing from. So you really know kind of what this context of where this is emerging from. We also have a website, socialistshelf.com, where it's very early, but we've started publishing some stuff on there on our blog, The Shelf. We've got some literary criticism on there. We're going to have some short stories coming soon, so that'll be fun. And the last thing I'll plug is I have a book coming out this year. They Called Her Rebel. It is a fantasy novel about late stage capitalism, people power, and queer love. And it is, if you like, lesbian socialists that can throw lasers, you'll like this book. That's coming out in December, but it'll be available for pre-order pretty soon. So, you know, if you follow me on social media, and I'll post the link when it's up for pre-order, but I'll be plenty annoying about it. Nobody that follows me will miss it. I promise you that. And I have to say, money in my world, in my book, is called chromal, which I directly just changed chronal slightly because I thought it was interesting. It was like an addiction of primarily upper classes on the train Snowpiercer, and I thought it was a fun little homage to it. So if you like Snowpiercer, awesome. There's a little Snowpiercer nugget thrown into my book. So that ties that all together. But regardless of whether you check it out, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I really appreciate you having me on, Josiah. I had a ton of fun.
This was a blast, yeah. And you definitely check out Socialist Shelf. Great podcast. Really enjoy it. So. Hey, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, make sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps out with the algorithm. And if you really like what you heard, why don't you consider supporting the show on Patreon? For a mere $3 a month, you get access to a bunch of stuff. And one of the things that you get is you get your name read out at the end of every episode. So, without further ado, this episode is brought to you by our lovely patrons, who include Avakai Brodagam, I Drink Corn Syrup, Yum, I Am Once Again, Leo Zachary Dickinson, Philip Cozy, Vita Breva, Tension Francis, Derek Hale, Gavin Aronson, Josh Christensen, Kyle Gannis, Mitchell McKinley, Moss, Nathan Thiessen, Randy Sutton, Regular Sized Horse, Small, Robert Eilman, Stephen aka Spike Stonehand, The Worst of All Possible Worlds, Vicky Sutton Yeens, and of course, Chris Barker. Thank you so much for supporting the show, and I'll see you on the Patreon for another music exchange with Josh Christensen.